Hi guys, welcome back to my channel as we go through the Law of One raw material, and we are on book 4 and we're heading into part 5, which starts with session 81. But before we get started, I want to give some shout outs to some of the people that have donated to my channel. Pat D, you are awesome, you donate every single month. And Frank B, Pika, Santes, Kimberly K, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. You guys really help me stay motivated to put out some of these videos. And I'm going to get started with some definitions just as a refresher. So my last video, I believe, was the Fool's Journey, because video for the Tarot of the Fool's Journey to kind of paint a nice picture about what this book is about and what the concepts that we're trying to get our head around. And I also want to give some definitions to start us off a little bit as a refresher, because you hear the word archetype throughout this entire book. We're always talking about archetypes. And then you kind of think about, you don't hear the word archetype that often in our day-to-day lives. And some professors in universities give entire lectures. People dedicate their entire careers on archetypes. But just to break it down in the most simplest way, an archetype is a behavioral pattern. So in this book, we talk about the archetypes of the mind, archetypes of the body, and archetypes of the spirit. So when we say a behavioral pattern, something can only be called an archetype if it could cascade across different civilizations that don't have contact with each other. So it's an archetype if it's a behavioral pattern that is common in every single civilizations. And when we're talking about the raw material, it's an archetype because this is a behavioral pattern that is not just on Earth. It is a behavioral pattern that is found on other planets and other civilizations on other planets. So it's like, as an example, an archetype of the body would be that flight, fight, or freeze mode, right? Now that archetype of the body can be found, doesn't matter what planet you're on, not just, here on Earth where you get the fight or flight response to those that live in Africa or China or the Americas. It is an archetype because it is a behavioral pattern that is found everywhere, right? Even on other planets amongst alien civilizations. And that's what the archetypes that Ra is talking about. Another example, so that's one of the body. Let's one of the spirit, like the feeling of hope that civilizations have, the hope that there is something else out there besides yourself. That is an archetype feeling that every civilization wonders about and hopes for, and they get through that archetype during their civilization. So so whenever you hear the word archetype, a lot of it is an emotional archetype, but there are the body archetypes and the spirit as we ascend. And Ra has compiled these archetypes that are required for the mind, body, spirit complex to ascend and make that choice out of third density into the fourth. And it's compiled down to just 22 different types of archetypes. And that is what the tarot is. And that is what we're getting at when we talk about each card. Like I think in this next session, we talk about the Wheel of Fortune, which is number 10 in the tarot of the major arcana. And the Wheel of Fortune is really a very complex card. It's got so much symbology in it when you're a tarot reader. And this Wheel of Fortune is the highs and lows of life as we interact with every other person in our lives and every event in our lives. And there's highs and lows in life. And I think this is an archetype because every person that lives their lives, doesn't matter where they live, in what civilization, what planet, you experience highs and lows within your life when you interact with others. Sometimes, just like a marriage, say, has good years, it has bad years, it has ups and downs, and it's all intertwined, and it coalesces into the archetype of the Wheel of Fortune, which is one of the archetypes actually of the body. Your experiences with your life, the sicknesses, the health, the everything. So it's an incredibly complex card that we're talking about when we talk about the Wheel of Fortune. And I deep dive in some of that card in the previous video, so please check it out. And then as we go on here, another definition I really want to define, I'm trying not to go too long here so we can just get into the material, but the octave. So we really kind of dive in a little bit to Ra's history and his knowledge of an octave. Now, Ra only has knowledge of this octave. So when we think about what an octave is, so an octave are the 7 densities, because the 8th density is the movement into the next octave. So just like if you were to look up octave, you got the notes on a piano, and each octave has 7 notes on it, because the 8th note is the start of the next octave. So you can think about our entire universe being organized like that. We have the 7 densities, the 7 chakra system that combines and creates our reality of our entire universe, and that is just 1 octave. Even though the universe is infinite, we can only perceive the octave that we're in right now from this perspective, and that includes Ra. Ra talks about his teachers that have given him some knowledge about the 7th density, and that's what Ra is working towards. But he has said before he can't talk about the 8th density or the next octave because he hasn't experienced it yet, so he dares not talk about it. So that's just a quick definition of what an octave is. Think about it as everything that you can see with a telescope in our universe right now, that is still just that same octave. The next octave can't be perceived by us right now. So yeah, I just wanted to give that quick review. Thank you to everybody. And so let's get into it. Here is book 4, part 5 of the Law of One Raw Material.
The Law of One, Book 4, Session 81, March 22nd, 1982. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, could you first tell me the condition of the instrument? Ra, I am Ra. The physical complex energy is in deficit at this particular space-time nexus due to prolonged psychic accentuation of pre-existing distortions. The remainder of the energy complex levels are as previously stated. Questioner, is this the reason for the instrument's feeling of uninterrupted weariness? Ra, I am Ra. There are portions of your space-time in which this may be said to be symptomatic of the psychic greeting reaction. However, the continual weariness is not due to psychic greeting, but is rather an inevitable consequence of this contact. Questioner, why is this an inevitable consequence? What is the mechanism of this contact that creates this weariness? Ra, I am Ra. The mechanism creating weariness is that connection betwixt the density wherein this instrument's mind-body-spirit complex is safely kept during these workings and the altogether variant density in which the instrument's physical body complex resides at this space-time. As the instrument takes on more of the coloration of the resting density, the third density experience seems more heavy and wearisome. This was accepted by the instrument, as it desired to be of service. Therefore, we accept also this effect about which nothing of which we are aware may be done. Questioner, is the effect a function of the number of sessions, and has it reached a peak level or will it continue to increase in effect? Ra, I am Ra. This wearying effect will continue but should not be confused with the physical energy levels, having only to do with the, as you would call it, daily round of experience. In this sphere, those things which are known already to aid this instrument will continue to be of aid. You will, however, notice the gradual increase in transparency, shall we say, of the vibrations of the instrument. Questioner, I didn't understand what you meant by that last statement. Could you explain it? Spirit. Therefore, you may see the body as providing the athanor through which the alchemist manifests gold. Questioner, I have guessed that the way to enter into a better comprehension of the archetypes is to compare what we experience now, after the veil, with what was experienced prior to that time, starting possibly as far back as the beginning of this octave of experience. To see how we got into the condition that we are in now. If this is agreeable, I would like to retreat to the very beginning of this octave of experience to investigate the conditions of mind, body, and spirit as they evolved in this octave. Is this acceptable? Ra, I am Ra. The direction of questions is your provenance. Questioner, Ra states that it has knowledge of only this octave, but it seems that Ra has complete knowledge of this octave. Can you tell me why this is? Ra, I am Ra. Firstly, we do not have complete knowledge of this octave. There are portions of the seventh density which, although described to us by our teachers, remain mysterious. Secondly, we have experienced a great deal of the available refining catalyst of this octave, and our teachers have worked with us most carefully that we may be one with all, that in turn our eventual returning to the great allness of creation shall be complete. Questioner, then Ra has knowledge from the first beginnings of this octave through its present experience and what I might call direct or experiential knowledge through communication with those space-times and time-spaces, but has not yet evolved to or penetrated the seventh level. Is this a roughly correct statement? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. Questioner, why does Ra not have any knowledge of that which was prior to the beginning of this octave? Ra, I am Ra. Let us compare octaves to islands. It may be that the inhabitants of an island are not alone upon a planetary sphere, but if an ocean-going vehicle in which one may survive has not been invented, true knowledge of other islands is possible only if an entity comes among the islanders and says, I am from elsewhere. This is a rough analogy. However, we have evidence of this sort, both of previous creation and Athanor, an oven, a fire, a digesting furnace, formerly used in alchemy, so constructed as to maintain a uniform and constant heat. Creation to be, as we in the stream of space-time and time-space view these apparently non-simultaneous events. Questioner, we presently find ourselves in the Milky Way galaxy of some 200 or so billion stars, and there are millions and millions of these large galaxies spread out through what we call space. To Ra's knowledge, can I assume that the number of these galaxies is infinite? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is precisely correct and is a significant point. Questioner, the point being that we have unity. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. You are perceptive. Questioner, then what portion of these galaxies is Ra aware of? Has Ra experienced consciousness in many other of these galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. No. Questioner, has Ra experienced or does Ra have any knowledge of any of these other galaxies? Has Ra traveled to, in one form or another, any of these other galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. Yes. Questioner, it's unimportant, but how many other of these galaxies has Ra traveled to? Ra, I am Ra. We have opened our hearts in radiation of love to the entire creation. Approximately 90% of the creation is at some level aware of the sending and able to reply. All of the infinite logoi are one in the consciousness of love. This is the type of contact which we enjoy rather than travel. Questioner, so that I can just get a little idea of what I am talking about. What are the limits of Ra's travel in the sense of directly experiencing or seeing the activities of various places? Is it solely within this galaxy, and if so, how much of this galaxy? Or does it include some other galaxies? Ra, I am Ra. Although it would be possible for us to move at will throughout the creation within this logos, that is to say, the Milky Way galaxy, so-called, we have moved where we were called to service, these locations being, shall we say, local and including Alpha Centauri. Planets of your solar system, which you call the Sun, Cepheus, and Zeta Reticuli. To these sublogoi we have come, having been called. Questioner, was the call in each instance from the third density beings, or was this call from other densities? Ra, I am Ra. In general, the latter supposition is correct. In the particular case of the Sun sublogos, third density is the density of calling. Questioner, Ra then has not moved at any time into one of the other major galaxies. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, does Ra have knowledge of any other major galaxy or the consciousness of anything in that galaxy? Ra, I am Ra. We assume you are speaking of the possibility of knowledge of other major galaxies. There are wanderers from other major galaxies drawn to the specific needs of a single call. There are those among our social memory complex which have become wanderers in other major galaxies. Thus there has been knowledge of other major galaxies, for to one whose personality or mind-body-spirit complex has been crystallized, the universe is one place and there is no bar upon travel. However, our interpretation of your query was a query concerning the social memory complex traveling to another major galaxy. We have not done this, nor do we contemplate it, for we can reach in love with our hearts. Questioner, thank you. In this line of questioning, I am trying to establish a basis for understanding the foundation for not only the experience that we have now, but how the experience was formed and how it is related to all the rest of the experience through the portion of the octave as we understand it. I am assuming, then, that all of these galaxies, this infinite number of galaxies that we can just begin to become aware of with our telescopes, are all of the same octave. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, I was wondering if some of the wanderers from Ra in going to some of the other major galaxies, that is, leaving this system of some 200 billion stars of lenticular shape and going to another cluster of billions of stars and finding their way into some planetary situation there, would encounter the dual polarity that we have here, the service to self and the service to others polarities? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, you stated earlier that toward the center of this galaxy is what, to use a poor term, you could call the older portion where you would find no service to self polarization. Am I correct in assuming that this is true with the other galaxies with which wanderers from Ra have experience? At the center of these galaxies, only the service to others polarity exists, and the experiment started farther out toward the rim of the galaxy? I am Ra. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the infinite Creator. Adonai.